So I will present a second demonstrator, which is the digital agricultural avatar. So it's a fully in silico demonstrator. So we'll not show nice experiments with the bees. Maybe first, I would like to quickly say what we mean by digital agricultural avatar on a general basis within the community. So another name that you might have heard regarding, so for digital avatars, it's digital twin as well. So it's different names for roughly the same strategy. The strategy is that we have a virtual representation of a physical object, and we have communication between these two objects, these two entities, so the in silico one and the physical one, such as the physical object sends information to the digital object, and the digital object sends more information and more knowledge about the status of that physical object. So new decisions can be taken accordingly. In the framework of agriculture, and here in PhenoRob, the idea is that we have models, so computational models, that we feed with field data, and that's computational models will then inform us better about the status of the crop, and ultimately, but that's still in the future, will then inform us about what type of strategy management we should take for improving the crop, then growth, productions, and so on. Maybe just one thing here. So in this demonstrator project, we focus on models that are linked really to the biological objects of the crop, so the plants and the crop itself. We do not include the agent-based model, for instance, for the farmer decisions and so on. So it's really focusing here on the crop itself. So the idea here of this demonstrator within PhenoRob is it comes from the fact that we have several models used in PhenoRob, and I will go a bit more into detail after that. And what we wanted to do is to make them more visible and make them more integrated. And for that, there are several steps and actions that we are taking in this demonstrator. First is to try to somehow unify some of the modeling approaches. This is maybe a bit far-fetched because the model exists, they are there, but we try to make connections between them simply by making having a better overview of the input-outputs of the different models, for instance, and then also give more access to these different models, give them more visibility. And when we say access and visibility, it's both for the scientific community, but also for other stakeholders, farmers, breeders, anyone interested, teachers, for instance, in these types of tools. We also want to increase the collaboration within PhenoRob between the different sub-projects using these different models. And so for that, I just want to introduce the two persons we hired on that project and that are working on this digital avatar. There is Said and Satyan. They are both in the audience today. So if there are specific questions, I will redirect them to both of them. Modeling within PhenoRob. So model, if you look into the different sub-projects of PhenoRob, modeling is in almost all of them. It's not in the name of PhenoRob, but there is a lot of model in PhenoRob. They serve as integrators of phenotyping data. They can use to predict the states and the needs of the crops, or to predict the future of a crop production. They can help analyze partial data and so on. So there is a lot of modeling involved in the different sub-projects of PhenoRob. And we actually have model on very different scales. So here it's an overview, again, of the models dealing with more the biological entities. at different scales. So if you go from right to left, so we have models dealing with continental scale simulations, TSS-MP, and then we have models at more the fields, crop scale, such as AgroC SimPlace. Again, I will just go a bit more into the details afterwards. Then we can zoom in and have model at the plant scale, plants being root system, but also the full plants, such as C plant box and Dumux-Rosie. And you can even zoom in a bit deeper with models at the organ scale to have more precise information on a very local basis. And so what we wanted to do in the demonstrator is to, again, showcase all of these different models, present them in a more, let's say, coherent way, and also make links between them and show that we can actually connect these different scales to have an increased knowledge about the systems that we are studying. So a quick overview of the different models, again, so you have a better idea of what we are talking about. So the first one, and now I will go from organ to large-scale models. The first model is Granard. So Granard is a model that can generate anatomical networks. So what you actually see here, and I'm sorry, the picture is not that great, is anatomical structure of roots of, in this case, maize. So these are networks that you can acquire experimentally, but it's very time consuming. So this model actually generates this type of networks automatically, and it's very fast. Why do we need that? Because we can actually use these type of networks to then feed them into another type of model, which is a functional model. So we put function on top of the structure that we just generated, and that functional model with that specific structure can then predict, in this case, for the model MECA, predict water flow across these organ scale models. These help us understand what are the determinants of which traits of the plant actually influence, in this case, water flow. If we move one scale, we can go to the, we have the C plant box model. So the C plant box model, it's a model that generates the structure of a plant. And here, when I'm talking about the structure of the plant, it's a very detailed structure. So we will represent with that model every single organ. So you can see here, every single root of a root system is represented. So we have a very detailed representation of the structure of the plants. Here you see only the roots, but actually C plant box does both the roots and the shoot. And then within that structure, we can actually simulate explicit functions. So we can simulate water flow, carbon flow, photosynthesis. So we can simulate these physiological processes that will be influenced by local conditions. So photosynthesis, for instance, will be influenced by local shading. Water uptake of a single root will be influenced by the amount of water that is available in a single soil around that root. So we need to have that precise description of the structure to understand here how the function will work. That model can also be used on a larger scale, but then becomes more computationally more expensive, but I will come back to that. But this is just an example that we can actually simulate fields with that level of details, at least for the structural part. If now you want to resolve all the functions of these plants, then it becomes a bit too much in terms of computational power. We can then link that structure, that plant, to its environments, being in this specific case with the Dumux-Rosie model being the soil. So the soil, very complex environments, a lot of different processes happening in the soil. And I'm sorry, this is supposed to be a video, but I think I lost it when copy pasting. But there is another one afterward. With that Dumux-Rosie model, we can actually integrate the plants and the soil. We actually go directly to this one. And so we can really see the interaction between these two different processes. Here in this video, what you see is a simulation of the plants and then the root growth in both uncompacted soil on the left and compacted soil on the right. So compacted soil much harder, that might be due to plowing practices. And here what we will see in this simulation is the effect of that plow pan on the development of the root system, on its exploration of the soil, and then on its capacity to uptake water afterwards. So here we have a model still at the plant scale that allows us to link really the structure of the plant, the function of the plant, and then the soil properties, and so its direct environment. Now, if we move one scale up, then we reach what we call usually the crop models, crop scale models dealing with field. And for that, we have two main models used in PhenoRob. The first one is AgroC. So AgroC, in this case, we actually don't simulate the full architecture of the plant. This is not the aim of this type of model. These are 1D models. So we have different compartments along the crop, but you don't represent the physical aspect of the crop or the physical architecture of the crop, which allows you then to upscale your simulation and do it on much larger scale. So you're not confined to a single plant, but to a whole field, to several crops, to regions. AgroC, the focus of AgroC is really the carbon budget and the interaction between carbon and nitrogen, which are, as you know, important components of the cropping system. Another crop model used in the project is SimPlace, which is maybe more of a platform than a standalone model, because SimPlace actually combine, as you can see on this illustration, a lot of different modules that you can activate or not to again simulate the response of the crop. Again, this time not a very detailed representation, but you can look at the behavior, the global behavior of the crop in response to changes in environmental conditions, temperature, radiation, CO2, water availability, and so on. But again, here we have a simple representation that allows us then to upscale the simulations to much larger physical domain. And if you go again one step up, then you have the Thesis MP model that's really focused here on the interaction between the atmosphere, the land surface, and the subsurface processes with the for the water flow. And so Thesis MP is able to predict water flow and changes, for instance, in the water content in the soil on a really large scale. And here we can see it's on the European Codex. And so this is again a much larger model. This one needs to be run on the supercomputer, and it runs on the supercomputer that we have in Jülich. But again, here, of course, because you upscale, you increase the size of the domain that you're looking at, you have to decrease the accuracy of the different processes that you are looking at. So that's the idea behind the model coupling. The model coupling, the idea is that because we lose some information if we go up into the scale, or because we cannot do large-scale simulation if we have too much details, we need to find ways to actually couple these different models so they can inform each other to have more accurate simulation and predictions. And so I will give you two examples of existing couplings. The first one here is a coupling between the organ and the plant scale. So we did a coupling between this anatomical model. So we have these anatomies. We can simulate water flow locally within one single root. And then we actually linked that to the C plant box model. And so we can simulate water flow locally within the anatomies, but also on the whole root system. And so you can see then the interaction between anatomical features and global water flow. With this type of model, we actually showed the importance of anatomical features for these plant scale processes. Another coupling that was done also in the framework here of PhenoRob was between C plant box and SimPlace. So here it's between the organ scale and the crop scale. And the idea, as I said, is that SimPlace does not have a very detailed representation of the architecture of the plant, and that's even more true for the roots. Sorry, for the root system. So the root system components in most crop models is very basic, and the idea here was to increase the representation, to improve the representation of the Simple's roots with C root box. And so there is a communication between the two models where Simple's actually sends global variables and global states to C root box that can then grow a more detailed root system and then send back that root system, or at least a simplified version of that root system that can be understood by Simple's to have a better representation of the root system in Simple's. This is important, for instance, in the case of drought stress, where the root system is at the interface really between the plant and the soil. And so having an accurate representation of the root system allows you to have a better representation of the impact of drought on the crop. So all of that, we actually combine that into a website. So the website, it's still very much in progress. So now it's a kind of the beta version of the website. But if you go there on that link, I will put it back also at the end. You will actually have a vision on the different models. So we present the different models that we have here that I just showed here, but with a bit more details, with the link to the code and so on. We also present the existing couplings that I just showed. So there is a lot of resources. The idea is to have all the resources in one place to showcase all of that. So what's next? What we want to do in the next of this demonstrated project is to develop more coupling examples, and I will show you two examples that we are working on right now. We would like to have web interfaces for the individual models and for the coupling. I will also show some example of web interface. The idea here is to have an easy entry point into the models, because if you have to download the model, download the libraries, install Python, blah, 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 just to run one model and see what it can do, that's a very steep entry point. And so the web interface acts as really a doorway into the models without any technical knowledge. So we want to work on that. That's a big part of the demonstrator. And then also develop tutorial videos for the different models and for the different publics. And we detail that also a bit more. So one coupling that we are exploring right now is between AgroC and TSSMP. So as I said, AgroC focuses a lot, focuses on carbon and nitrogen cycle, while TSSMP focus on the water dynamics within the system. And we know that both, so carbon, nitrogen, and water, they interact a lot in the agricultural systems. And so there is a real interest to try to make some couplings between these two so they can actually exchange information. One way, so one example would be for TSSMP to actually inform AgroC about the soil moisture, because the soil moisture will influence the different processes, the different metabolic rates within the soil, and so on. So that's the first coupling that we are exploring right now. The second one is a bit wider in terms of different scales, is to look whether on the coupling between C plant box directly and TSSMP. So there the idea would be to actually simulate single plants on a very large scale, so continental scale in that case. So that's kind of a brute force exercise. It will require to have very powerful computers, but we have some of them in Jülich. The idea there would be to test, potentially test differences in root phenotypes or plant phenotypes on the water dynamics on a very large scale. So we can have different phenotypes, different plants can have very different root systems, deeper, shallower, with very different performances. And so that's one way we could try that and try that effect on a very large scale. So that's also something we are exploring right now. So for the web interfaces, we have a couple of them existing for the single models. So this is an example of the web interface. I forgot to put the link. I can send it afterwards. For the Mecha model, again, the idea of the web interface here, we use a package that is called Shiny, which is developed for R, that is very easy to use and allows you to really put an interface, a push button interface around the different models. So in this case, you can simulate water flow in different cross section. We also have one for seawood box, sea plant box, where you can select different plants, change the different parameters, and see the effects of these changes on the output of your simulation. So these interfaces, they have limitations. They do not allow you to access the full power of the different models, but they can give you a much better impression of what the model can do. And again, it's an easy entry point. You just go to the web page, click the buttons, and the model runs. So we will extend these and have more web interface for more models, again, to showcase what they can do. And finally, what you want to do, as I said, is different videos for the different models to actually show how the model can work. But we also want to do that for different type of audiences. So if a breeder, for instance, a breeder, a researcher, a teacher, they might have different needs regarding the models. And so what we want to do is to do some tutorial videos, but with different audiences in mind. So depending of your needs, you can actually use the model differently, and you can use also the interfaces differently. And so that's also something that we'll be working on. And that's it. Again, I put the link there so you can check the website. Again, very much a work in progress, but the idea is to assemble all of what we're doing right now on that website. And I'm happy to take questions.